This is the live podcast with Manuel, living in full expression. Most people are asking the wrong question about artificial intelligence. They are asking, can a machine do what I do? And the answer, in more fields than most of us are comfortable admitting, is increasingly yes. But this is not the question that matters. The question that matters is this: when the machine does what you do, what is left? Because what remains when your technical utility is automated is not nothing. It is the most important thing. The singular depth of your human presence, your judgment, your connection, and your capacity to give something to another person that no algorithm has ever been able to synthesize. This episode is about finding that thing, naming it, and building your life and your career on it. This is living in full expression, not in spite of the age of AI, but precisely because of it. Welcome to the live podcast with me, your host, Manuel. And today we're going to be discussing the untaught lesson of purpose. So last week, I was facilitating a workshop in my community. And in the middle of the session, one of the participants, somebody I respect, said something that stopped the room. She said, most dangerous things happening right now is not that people are using AI. It is that people are using AI to present a version of themselves that does not exist. And she was talking about something specific. She had seen it play out in workplaces. A team member producing reports that are polished, articulated, and impressive, and performing at a level that had nothing to do with what those reports suggested. The AI had written the document, the person had submitted it, and the gap between what the output claimed and what the human being could actually deliver had become, in her words, dangerous. And I want you to sit with that word, dangerous, because it is the right word. Not because AI is the threat, but because the misuse of AI, using it to cover a gap rather than to close one, is producing a generation of professionals whose identity is built on borrowed competencies. And borrowed competencies has a moment of reckoning. It always does. But here is the thing: I want to take this episode where the warning does not go on its own, because the warning is only half the picture. The full picture is this: AI is not just exposing the people who hide behind the polished outputs. It is also amplifying the people who have real depth to offer. And the question of how you become the second kind of person, how you find, name, and build your life on something an algorithm genuinely cannot replicate, is the most important career and life question of 2026 going forward. So if you're ready, let's dive in. Now, let me tell you what is actually happening in 2026 job market, because I think most people are misdiagnosing it, and a misdiagnosis leads to the wrong treatment. The common diagnosis is AI is taking jobs, and that is partly true. In specific sectors and specific task categories, it is actually taking jobs. But it is not the complete picture. The more accurate and more uncomfortable diagnosis is this: AI is commoditizing technical skills. The thing that used to differentiate a high performer from an average performer in most professions, speed of execution, quality of output, breadth of knowledge, ability to synthesize information. These are no longer differentiators. They are the floor. They are the minimum that the machine produces automatically, at a fraction of the cost, in a fraction of the time. So, which means that if your professional identity, if your sense of what makes you valuable, what makes you worth hiring, what makes you worth listening to, is built primarily on technical competence, you are standing on a ground that is moving underneath your feet. Not because you are incompetent, but because the competency you built your identity on has been reclassified. What was a competitive edge 5 years ago is a commodity today. Now, here is where most people stop the conversation. They say, therefore, upskill, learn to use the tools, stay ahead of the technology. And that advice is not just misleading, but it is dangerously incomplete. Because the upskilling conversation assumes that the response to the commoditization of technical skill is more technical skill, faster treadmill, a higher bar of proficiency that will this time hold its value. And the problem is that this approach is playing the machine's game. You will not outrun a machine on the machine's terms. The machines run faster and is going faster every day. It learns faster. It does not get tired. It does not have a bad morning. The workshop participant I mentioned at the opening of this episode identified the symptom. The polished report that does not reflect real capability. But the course is older than AI. The course is an identity built entirely on output, on utility, on what you can produce rather than who you are and what you bring. AI did not create the problem. It simply made it impossible to hide. So here's the analogy I wanted to carry from this episode. AI is like an X-ray machine. It does not replace your skeleton. It makes your skeleton visible. And the people whose skeleton has been built from real depth, genuine expertise, developed judgment, authentic human presence, the capacity to connect and lead and create meaning for other people, those people are not threatened by the X-ray. They welcome it because it shows what is actually there. But the people who are threatened by the X-ray are the people whose professional presentation, has been operating independently of what is underneath it. Not because they are dishonest people, but because the system they were working in rewarded the presentation for long enough that the gap between the two became habitual and then invincible. AI made the gap visible again, and that is not a crisis. That is a gift if you know what to do with it. Now, let me go back to the workshop because what happened after the participant made a point is the part that matters most. The room got quiet, the particular quiet that a room gets when something true has been said that nobody was prepared to argue with. And then someone on the other side of the room, a different participant, younger, maybe earlier 30, says something equally important. She said, "But I use AI every day, and I am better at my job than I have ever been." And both things were true. That is the thing I want you to hold. Both statements in that room were simultaneously verifiably true. One person has watched AI widen the gap between what people claim to be and what they actually were. The other person had used AI to amplify what she already was, doing the mechanical part of her work faster and better so that her time, her energy, and her presence could go where they genuinely mattered. And this could mean into the conversation with client, into the creative problem that required her specific way of seeing things, into the relationship that required her specific quality of attention. Now, the difference between those two people is not their relationship with technology, it is their relationship with themselves. The first type, the person using AI to produce a presentation that does not reflect real capability, is using AI as a substitute for depth. The second type, the person using AI to free up space for depth, is using it as an amplifier. And the amplifier only works if there is something real to amplify, which is the question this episode is really about. Not how do you keep up with the AI, but what is the real thing in you that once AI has done everything it can do, it is still there? What is the depth? What is the singular quality of your human presence that a client, a colleague, a team, a community would lose if you were replaced by a well-prompted algorithm? So, if you have a clear, confident answer to that question, you are ready for the AI age. If you don't, that is not an indictment. That is the starting point, and that is exactly where I want to take you right now. So I want to do something with you, not rhetorical, not something to reflect on later. I want to ask you something right now, and I want you to actually answer it. If you can, do stop what you're doing if it is safe for you to do so, and give this your full attention for the next few minutes. Because what I'm about to ask you is the most important professional and personal question of this decade. And here is the first question. If your employer or your client or your community had access to everything AI can now do at no cost and with no friction, what would they still need you for? I want you to allow that question to sink. Maybe I should take that again. If your employer or your client or your community had access to everything AI can now do at no cost, with no friction, what would they still need you for? Not what you hope they would need you for. I mean, not the job description, not the CV. What would they actually, genuinely, specifically still need from you? The human being behind the role that the algorithm cannot provide. What would that be? And I wanted to take a moment with that. Not in your head, I mean in your heart. Where does the answer feel solid? And where does it feel uncertain? Because here's what I observed. Most people, when they sit with that question honestly, find that some of what they do is solid and some of it is not. Some of their values is genuinely irreplaceable. I mean, the judgment, the relationship, the specific way they read the room or hold a conversation or make someone feel seen. And some of it is output that, if they are honest, the machine could probably do adequately. This is not a failure. This is a map. And the map is showing you exactly where to invest. Now, here is the second question. If you have allowed the first one to sink and you've been able to identify the answer for that. The second question, and this one goes deeper. When did you first define your worth by what you could produce? Not in those words in particular, but when did you first absorb the lesson, maybe from school, from a parent, from your workplace, from the culture you grew up in, that your value as a person is primarily a function of your output? Maybe your grade, your results, your productivity, your performance review. You can go on and name them. I want you to sit with that for a moment. Because the productivity trap is not primarily a technology problem. It is a formation problem. Most of us were formed from very early on to understand ourselves through the lens of what we produced, the results, the accolades. Say, for instance, the child who is praised for result learns gradually to locate their worth in results. And when the result can be produced by a machine, the identity that was built on producing them begins to shake. And this is what I mean when I say that AI has not created the crisis. It has revealed it. I mean, the crisis, the conflation of human worth with human utility has been there for decades. AI has simply made it impossible to sustain the illusion. Now, here's the third question, and this is the one I want you to carry out of this episode. What has been true about you in the moment when you have felt most alive, most useful, most genuinely connected to why you do what you do, that had nothing to do with your output? Not what you think. I mean, what you have actually experienced. Maybe the moment a client said something shifted for them in a conversation with you, and it was not the report you had written, it was the way you listened. Maybe the moment you solved the problem, not because you had the fastest access to information, but because you had the judgment to know which information mattered. Maybe the moment someone trusted you, not because of your credentials, but because of something about how you showed up. Those moments are the data. Those moments are pointing to the thing that remain. When the machine has done everything the machine can do. And that is your depth. That is your purpose. That is what this episode is asking you to find, name, and build your next chapter on. I want to give you a framework. 5 dimensions of human depth that no automation has been able to replicate. And that becomes more valuable, not less, the more automated the world becomes. These are not abstract virtues. They are specific, cultivatable, demonstrable human capacities. And each of them is an answer to the question, what are you still here for? Now, let me give you the first dimension, which is contextual judgment. So, AI process information, human being read situations. The ability to walk into a room, read what is not being said, feel the emotional undercurrent of a conversation, and make a call based on everything that is present, not just the data, is not a skill the machine is developing. It is a human capacity that develops through lived experience, and it is irreplaceable in every domain where people and relationships are involved, which is most domains that matters. If you want to develop this, stop outsourcing your judgment. Use AI for the information. Make the call yourself. Train the judgment muscle by actually using it. That way, you'll be able to develop this more. Dimension number 2, genuine human connection. Purpose and fulfillment at their deepest level are not found in what you produce. They are found in what you connect with and how deeply. The research census across decades of human well-being studies is ambiguous on this point. The quality of human relationship is the single strongest predictor of a meaningful life. Not income, not status, not productivity, but relationships. And genuine human connection is not something AI can stimulate. Not because the outputs are not sometimes convincing, but because connection requires mutual presence. 2 beings, both actually there, both actually affected by the encounter. That is not what happens with a machine. And in a world where more and more human interaction is mediated by automation, the person who can create genuine connection, real, felt, mutual human connection, is extraordinarily valuable in every domain. If you want to develop this is what you need to do. Be more present, not more productive. I mean more present. The attention you give another person, full, undivided, genuinely curious attention, is becoming the rarest resource in the automated world. it is also becoming the most valuable. Dimension number 3, creative intuition. So AI can produce, but it cannot originate. It can synthesize what has been made before, but it cannot bring into being what has never existed. The specific combination of your experience, your perspective, your failures, your particular way of seeing the world, the creative intuition that emerges from the singular life you have lived, is not reproducible by any model trained on anyone else's data. But most people have not developed this capacity, not because they are not creative, but because the system they were formed in did not reward originality. It rewarded correct answers. And correct answers are exactly what AI produces faster than anyone. The invitation of this moment is to stop competing on correct answers and start investing in original ones. Here's the 4th dimension, moral presence. Who are you? The quality of your character, the consistency of your value, the way you behave when no one is watching, the decision you make when doing the right thing is harder than the expedient thing. It's not something AI can perform. It can mimic the language of ethics. It cannot inhabit them. And in a world that is increasingly uncertain about who to trust, the person whose moral presence is real and consistent becomes a gravitational force. People orbit them. They want to work with them, for them, and alongside them. Your character is not separate from your career. It is your most durable professional asset. So here's the 5th dimension, the capacity to be with. This is the one most people overlook. The capacity to be with another person in difficulty, to sit with them in confusion, in grief, in uncertainty, in the hard seasons of a professional or personal life, and not rush them towards resolution. This is one of the most profound and most undervalued human capacity. It is what great coaching is. It is what great leadership is. It is what great friendship and parenting and mentorships are. It is not problem solving, it is presence. And it cannot be automated. So I wanted to know that these 5 dimensions together are your answer to the question the automated world is asking of every human being right now. What are you still here for? Not your job title, not your output. These 5 things, they are the answer. And the life built on them is not just purposeful in the abstract sense of that word. It is specifically, practically, economically, and relationally valuable in ways that we compound as the automated world accelerates. In closing, let me give you 3 things to take out of this episode. Number 1 is this: audit your identity. This week, sit with this question honestly. How much of your professional self-worth is built on outputs? On what you produce versus depth? On who you are and what you bring? The ratio tells you everything about your vulnerability to automation. And it gives you a specific direction for your investment. Number 2, identify your deepest dimension. Of the 5 dimensions I mentioned, contextual judgment, genuine human connection, creative intuition, moral presence, and the capacity to be with, which one is most genuinely yours? Not which one sounds best. I mean, which one, when you are operating from it fully, feels most like you? I wanted to name it. Develop that deliberately. Make it the axis of your next professional chapter. Number 3, use AI as an amplifier, not a substitute. The participant in my workshop who said she was better at her job than ever is not threatened by AI. she is amplified by it. Every mechanical task the algorithm takes from her frees up space for the human dimension that actually defines her value. And that is the relationship. AI handles the production. You deliver the depth. I have produced a premium worksheet for this episode. It takes you through a complete human depth audit, helping you identify your strongest dimension, trace where your identity has been resting on output, and build a personal purpose statement that is automation proof. And you will find the link in the description. And if this episode found you at a moment when you have been quietly wondering what your place is in a world that seems to be moving faster than your ability to keep up, I want you to know something. The answer is not to run faster. The answer is to go deeper. Go in deeper into the human being underneath the professional, into the presence, the connection, the judgment, the character that no algorithm has ever been able to replicate. And that is where your purpose lives. It has always been there. AI did not threaten it. AI simply made it impossible to ignore any longer. The X-ray is not the enemy. The X-ray is the invitation. Welcome to Living in Full Expression. And until I see you in our next episode, keep living in full expression.